Welcome to Dan's Talks. My guest today is Fern Bernstein, the author of a new book called Staunch, which is about Little Edie and Big Edie. That should ring a bell. If it doesn't by the end of this podcast, it will, I hope. And I will start by mentioning that Big Edie and Little Edie were, their last name was Beale. And they lived in East Hampton in a mansion, which was a wreck and falling apart and vines coming all over it. And they wound up being the subject of a documentary, at least two movies, several books, I think even a coloring book. And Little Edie became sort of a fashion icon. But Fern, tell me what got you interested in writing this book and adding it to the voluminous collection of material that has been written about it and shown about it.
Sure. Well, I want to say thank you so much for having me on your program, and I'm really enjoying the opportunity to speak with you today about my book. So it was summer of 2020, and we were all dealing with COVID. Some of us, in lockdown and kind of living in vacuums. So I was at my summer house in Southold, and I was just kind of scrolling, laying on the couch, going through, different movie options to watch. And I came across, in the documentary section, the picture of Little Edie standing in front of Grey Gardens, which was really a decrepit looking home. And she had this sort of tattered looking fur coat and head coverings and this sort of interesting look on her face. And I pressed the button to play, and down the rabbit hole I went. And I was at the time, I guess, maybe say 53. And I had never heard of Grey Gardens. And I've lived on Long Island for 20 years. And I summered in the town of Greenport for many years. And I just wasn't familiar with Grey Gardens, but boy, did this film acquaint me with it. And I just went down the rabbit hole.
Why don't you tell us a little bit about Grey Gardens and what that was the name of a house, but tell us about the story.
About the documentary that the Maisels made. Yeah. So it's a 1976 documentary, and it's been around for a long time. It has really like a cult following at this point. And it was shot within 6 weeks, and it took, I think about a year and a half for the editors to really create a story out of all of the footage. And it is about a mother and daughter. To me, it's a love story, and how they lived together in a house that was literally falling apart around them. And there was singing and dancing and sort of, this dysfunctional relationship that viewers are brought into. And I think at the end of the documentary, viewers, or at least myself, are left with more questions than answers. And that made me go down the rabbit hole and want to learn more. And you had mentioned there were other films. So I watched The Edies of Grey Gardens that summer, which was almost the prequel. The house was in much worse shape when it was being filmed in that summer. One
movie was made, starred Jessica Lange as Little Edie.
Just going to mention that one, which was an HBO version. And Drew Barrymore and Jessica Lange portrayed the Edies. They both did beautiful, beautiful jobs portraying them and looking like them. And there was also, on Broadway, there was, I think it was 2007, there was a musical. I mean, the lives of so many creative people out there.
Well, I think what was going on, I remember it from the beginning, because they were having food delivered by Dreesen's Meat Market in East Hampton, who the delivery boy was reporting this was a very unsanitary condition with many, like 23 cats, raccoons, they're all in and out of the house. And it turned out they'd been living there as a time warp because Big Edie, when young, was divorced from her wealthy husband in the social set, wound up with this house and lived in it, and it all fell apart around her, and she never tried fixing it up or changing it. And her daughter joined her, and sort of was under her control, the control of the older woman, about not ever leaving. But little Edie wanted to be a movie star, and she still couldn't leave. And even at the end of the book, couldn't leave. And I recall going there once, and it was a haunted house, but there was a light on inside.
Yeah.
And also, they were related to Jackie Kennedy. They were her aunt and cousin.
Yes, they were. The Bouvieres were a very, I think, integrated family in East Hampton. And
Yes, right.
John Bouvier, I think he was the second, was a great orator. He was a lawyer and financier in Manhattan. And I believe he was, involved in the town in leadership. And the Bouvieres, Jackie Kennedy Onassis is definitely a very important family member to them, as well as her sister, Lee Radziwill, who had married a prince and was Princess Lee Radziwill.
That's what made it so special. The nickname for her father, who abandoned the both of them, was Blackjack Bouvier.
Yes, Blackjack.
So it was almost like a movie in itself.
Yeah,
and
there's a lot of intrigue.
And it stayed there like that for about 25, 30 years and 40 years. And that's when these filmmakers came. So now it's on your court. You tell us from there. I just wanted to make sure the viewers knew what this was about, all of it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so I just was so intrigued by what I had seen in the documentary. I watched the other films that were out there, and I enjoyed the HBO version of the story as well. And I was writing a different story at the time, and it just kind of morphed into a story about the Edies. And one thing that's very important for me as a podcast host and as an author, so I have two podcasts. One is about Mah Jongg, a game that I love to play, and the other is about Grey Gardens, and it's titled Grey Gardens. It's very important for me to honor the Edies. Yes, they were two eccentric women, and they chose to live life very differently than many. And I didn't want to focus on the negativity, but to really focus on their strengths individually as women, collectively as a mother and daughter duo, and bringing in the strength of women around them within their family and their friends. So that would be Jackie, that would be Lee, Lois Wright, who was a friend that was a very near and dear friend to Big Edie, and she actually just passed away last week. And she was 95 years old, and she had lived with the Edies for about a year, and she wrote a book about it called 13 Months and Beyond, living there at Grey Gardens. And she was an artist and a palm reader. So she had a program, LTV, which I'm sure you're familiar with, Dan.
I'd met her a couple of times, slow talking.
Yes.
Kind of spooky person in many ways.
And, she was a very spiritual woman. And and I actually had the chance to meet her last summer. A friend of hers, his name is Brian Buck, and he runs the Grey Gardens Facebook group. And he's was a dear friend of Lois's. And I was able to go with him and visit with her. And it was really quite special and memorable to me. So, I put together the story. It took me 3 years to write. There was, lots of research I did, and crafting a story, really takes time. I worked with professionals, with developmental editors and copy editor. I self-published my book, but I wanted to make sure I surrounded myself with a team of professionals to really make this book a high quality book and read. And I enjoyed working with the cover designer, and I think that we really kind of nailed it. I've gotten so many compliments on the cover, and I wanted to depict little Edie. And as we know, when she's reading her Zolar book of the stars, she has her magnifying glass, which we can see right here, and she's got the family brooch, and I have a copy that I'm wearing. And this is by a member of the Facebook group. And another copy of this was used by Drew Barrymore in the HBO version. And Christine Ebersole wore a copy of this on stage as well when she was.
She won Emmys for Grey Gardens.
Yes, yes, yes. It was really just amazing. And I think that this is a story that just touches the heart of so many people. And it's not just really a niche read for Grey Gardens fans, because as I said earlier, it's a story that really talks about the power of women and the support of women around us, individually, collectively. And it's a mother and daughter love story. And people that have read it so far that have reached out to me have enjoyed the story. And I'm so grateful for that, because when an author pours their heart and soul into their story, they hope that it will be well received by readers.
And did you take any kind of a different approach to others who've written books about them? How did this, what
Well,
is the
sure.
end say?
My book is different. Number one, I didn't meet the Edies. I didn't live with them. There's a few books by two people that had the opportunity to live with them. I adore the book by the Maisels daughters. They created a book called Grey Gardens, and it's a beautiful collage book, and it has the transcript from all of the words that were spoken in Grey Gardens, and there's just beautiful pictures and collages. I really enjoy that. But there's not a book like mine yet, which is a story where I feel it kind of fills in some of the blanks. It's historical fiction. It's women's contemporary fiction. It's not a biography by any means. I do bring in elements of their lives that did happen and names of people that lived in their life, but I created, I guess, some of the backstory and filler to really, I feel, flesh out the movie Grey Gardens, because I was left with so many questions instead of answers. And so I hope that my book kind of created a story that fills in the blanks for readers, and it certainly honors the Edies and shows the hardships of women in the 1920s. There were constraints that women had to face, and Big Edie, being a soprano singer and being trained for so long, but yet couldn't go on stage to sing because women of society didn't do such things, was really hard for her. And it was like the push and pull for many years, but it eventually was part of the demise of her marriage to Phelan Beale.
And there was so many conflicting emotions that her daughter felt when the Maisels came to film, she jumped on it. It was like, this is my way to stardom, and I'll tell them.
Absolutely. And I tie that into the story. Can I read the back copy for you and the listeners for a little bit of intrigue?
You could for a couple of minutes. Yes,
Yeah, it won't take long. It's just the back copy, and I think it gives sort of a window into what the story is about. It's a dual timeline story, and it weaves the stories together and culminates in a very beautiful, poignant ending. Okay. Grey Gardens, 1972. Little Edie Beale had high hopes of becoming a star, sole companion and caretaker for her mother on a rundown property full of feral animals, tangled overgrowth, and piles of trash. The unmarried 50-something craves a way out. But when she attempts to burn away some of the clutter, the loyal daughter is horrified when the fire department arrives and triggers a slew of code violations and threats of eviction. 1923. Big Edie Beale longed to unleash her voice. Born a gifted soprano, she bristled every time her lawyer father and husband told her to put her stage ambitions aside and manage their sprawling seaside home and gardens. And when she decided to pursue music despite their judgment, the pampered socialite was left divorced with an empty bank account and a house too large to maintain. Driven to the brink by her mother's resolve to stay in the moldering mansion until her last breath, little Edie seeks help from their well-connected family, and as a film crew shows up to document the pair's drastic domesticity, Big Edie seizes the chance to speak her piece as little Edie shines in the spotlight, hoping to secure her dreams of fame. Can mother and daughter reclaim harmony as they share their heartbreaks with the world? So as you said, this was little Edie's opportunity to finally be a star. And the book opens with little Edie going through an old trunk up in the attic, and she finds her diary. So little Edie, as many readers know, she wrote diaries, and there was a book by a family member. She compiled some diaries when little Edie was a girl. It was a really interesting read. So the story opens up with the diary, and she flashes back being a little girl in their Madison Avenue apartment, reading a book with her mom, wanting to be a star. And then at the end of the book, we find out, does she find stardom? What is her definition of stardom? And how does she feel about it at that point in her life after being in a film?
That's a very good, interesting approach. I wanted to ask you to talk a little bit about her fashion.
She's a fashion icon.
She became such a fashion icon, it seemed to, by trying to drape herself in things that they didn't have, that they had in the house, but weren't meant to be used in certain ways. And in some ways, you tell me, it spawned a kind of following to people.
It did, certainly. After the film came out, there were American fashion designers. I don't have their names off the top of my head, but there were 3 American fashion designers that were influenced by Grey Gardens. And little Edie suffered from alopecia, so she wore head coverings. And that became a look in some of the fashion magazines. And she would cover her head with towels, with beautiful scarves, sweaters. She used clothing in very unconventional ways. She could do so much with the twist of a fabric or by adding safety pins. And there's a particular segment in the documentary when she's describing her costume of the day, and it was quite a mouthful. But she really had such fashion sense. And Jackie Onassis had sent a lot of clothes, things that maybe she wasn't wearing anymore, or things to help them have a wardrobe there. She would send items, blankets and gift baskets. So little Edie had the opportunity to have some really special pieces, and she would, combine them together. And as we see in the documentary and the other films, she has some very outlandish outfits, but
yes,
they're fabulous. And that's what makes her so wonderful. I mean, she really could have been a fashion designer. And I talk about that a little bit in the book as well. And, she kind of saunters into her mother's room, like pretending it's a catwalk, and showing a particular outfit that she's picked out for the day. And there's a section of the book where there's a knock on the door, and it's the Department of Health, and she's coming down looking kind of like a futuristic, fashionista. But she really, I think, had a way with clothing and blending styles and colors and fabrics and just bringing a look together. And I find it so amazing that Liz Lang, who's the current owner of Grey Gardens, was a fashion designer and a fashion icon.
Did you go to Grey Gardens?
No, I've driven past, and the East Hampton Historical Society is having a house tour, and Grey Gardens is included in that. So I will be going on that tour. I'm very excited for it. But I love the connection that Liz, who's so connected to fashion, and she currently owns a wonderful company called FIG, it's women's caftans, and I just love the connection of Edie's fashion, and now the owner of the home is this, fashion icon here in American culture, and it's very special.
How you got interested in writing a book? This is your second.
It's really more of an avocation for me. I had studied fashion merchandising and marketing while I was in college, and worked in that field for a little while. I actually married someone who's in the field. My husband has a textile company, focuses on linens that he imports. But it's really more of an avocation. I became, a stay-at-home mom for so many years, and I work part-time as a religious school teacher. It's just been a dream of mine. And, I've taken courses, and I've studied, and I've learned, and I was able to bring that dream to fruition. My first book was Mah Jongg Mondays. This was a memoir, a story about family, faith, and love. And about the game that I love to play and the very special friendships that exist around a Mah Jongg table. And so that's my story to write.
Well, thank you so much for being on the podcast. I appreciate talking to you, and good luck with your book. And also tell me about Greenport. Spend a few minutes talking about it.
Oh, gosh.
How long have you been coming out there?
Sure. So I came out in utero. My grandfather built the house decades and decades ago. So I came out there once I was born, and my mother was an avid boater and was kind of more like a tomboy. So we would go out on the boat all the time. We would go fishing and clamming. We had lobster pots. We went water skiing, and then we just had such wonderful, magical summers. I never went to summer camp. It was always, coming out to Greenport and spending time there. Unfortunately, when my parents divorced, that marital asset got sold. So the seed was planted. And the love that I've had for the East End has been there my whole life. My brother lives in East Marion, and I had this golden opportunity to buy a home 3 years ago in Southold. And I love spending time out there. It's my little Shangri-La. It's right on the water. And I don't have to explain to you, Dan, the beauty of the East End of Long Island.
Very true. What do you enjoy doing when you're out here?
Well, we have a boat ourselves. My husband had a very hard time with COVID and almost didn't make it. And he said if he gets out of the hospital, he wants to buy a boat. So we bought a boat, and we enjoy being out on the boat, fishing and just, driving around and tubing. And I just love, sitting and relaxing out back, looking at the water, biking, berry picking, just getting together with friends, going to the beach. So many wonderful things to do here on the island.
Was there a buffalo farm or a goat farm or something up there?
Yeah, there's a goat farm, and I have passed buffalo. I don't remember where they are exactly. Yeah. But there's certainly lots of farming out here. And it's beautiful. I mean, my main residence is in Melville, which is center of the island. And although it's very beautiful and suburban here, it's a different feel out in Southold. It's more rustic, and it's just so beautiful and so therapeutic. And I love it. And I feel so honored to be a resident of Southold.
Well, thank you for being on the podcast, and I want to look forward to hearing what happens with your book. And thanks very much again.
Thank you, Dan.
Okay. Bye-bye.